Jared Scott's Culture Shift Tour is sweeping the nation. All over the country, students are working together to take back the culture of their schools. After all, a student-made solution put into action starts a movement.
Shout out to my man, Jared Scott, bro. I'm so proud of you, Jared. Guess what Jared did? Jared, you've been speaking 13 years now, all across the country, all across the globe. But he still went back to school to get a degree in psychology because he wanted to make maximum impact and have the correct answers and the correct insight for these kids.
Since its inception, this program has reached millions of students and has a footprint in over 1,000 schools. Our speaker today promises not to disappoint with his message or his energy. Please put your hands together for our #1 youth speaker, Jared Scott.
When I say the word problem, how does that make you feel? What about when I say the word challenge? How does that make you feel? A little different? All right, let's try one more. What about when I say the word opportunity? How does that make you feel? A little bit better. That's because the words we choose to use matter. As human beings, we like to attach collective definitions to words, and with those definitions come emotional responses. Problems are problems. Ugh, they're debilitating. Challenges are challenging. They can be very, very frustrating. But opportunities, those are different. They're hopeful, they're optimistic. So out of all of these options, if you had to choose one, which one would you be willing to embrace? Probably an opportunity, right? I'm sure. But what if I told you that they're actually all three the same thing, just viewed from different perspectives? Now, I know what you're thinking. Jared, hold up. I see a lot of problems in my life. Those problems are challenging, but I don't see any opportunities. And you could be right. From your current perspective, that may be true. But this is where I get excited. Because you see, your problem is an opportunity for me to do what I love to do, teach. And it's the same for you in your various positions and fields within your own life. If there were no problems, then there would be no need for you to solve them, meaning that you would be out of a job. After all, a solution without a problem is pretty pointless, right? I mean, honestly, I believe that we as human beings, when we don't have problems, we just create our own problems out of boredom because our brains are wired to problem solve. Does that mean that we love problems? No, we love the satisfying feeling of purpose that we get when we solve problems. In fact, I think that's why you're here today. I'd be willing to bet the reason you are participating right now is that you recognize an area in your life where there is a problem and you are looking for the insights on how to solve that. And that's a good thing. So congratulations. That problem that seemed pretty pointless before, it now has a purpose. It put you here today to become a better person. But before we go any further and we talk about how to do that in this presentation, let's take a pause in relation to this word perspective. Perspective is so important when it comes to problem solving and seeing challenges as opportunities. In a psychological context, perspective refers to an individual's point of view or attitude towards a particular subject or situation. If you want to start seeing problems as opportunities, then you have to shift your perspective. How do you do that? Well, your perspective is highly influenced by your position, where you are in life, your environment, your friend group, your work situation, financial status, your education, your cultural background, your emotional state, your physical health, so on and so forth. Together, all of these factors shape how you view the world around you, forming what we call a worldview. So, if you want to change your perspective, the lens in which you see the world, you must first change your position. That is why we have assemblies and stuff like that in schools, because someone from the outside comes in to share their perspective of their outside position. That's why we have career days, so students can see various positions in the workplace to determine which one they might be interested in. It's why you're here today. Professional development workshops, conferences, all this stuff is the same. It's the same purpose behind it. When people gather, tell their stories, and share their insights from their positions, perspectives start shifting. Most of you will leave here today with a new perspective. And you're gonna feel energized, you're gonna feel encouraged, because with the newfound perspective, you can see a new pathway forward that you couldn't see before, and that pathway, it represents new opportunity. And new opportunity always brings with it hope. That wonderful, wonderful, wonderful feeling of hope. But unfortunately, for most of you, that shift in perspective is going to be short-lived. When you return back to your normal position, your home, your job, your way of living, you might revert back to your previous perspectives. Why? Well, because as soon as you go back to your everyday position, you might lose sight of that new pathway and consequently lose the hope that came with it. Matter of fact, I believe that a visionary is someone who sees beyond their current position, beyond their current circumstances. They're someone who doesn't lose the feeling of hope even when there's no hope to be found. It's not easy, and I know what a lot of you are going to say. You're like, Jared, that's just life, you know? Life is hard. How can I shift my perspective when my position is out of my control? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm not here to tell you that it's easy. You're right. It is pretty hard to change your perspective permanently. And you're right. A lot of the positions that you find yourself in are beyond your control. I mean, you remember the pandemic, right? The pandemic was different for everyone. It affected everyone and everything differently, and it put the world in a strange position. I remember when it first started, people were panicked. I mean, we were fighting over toiletries, right? No one knew what to do. There was so much uncertainty that fear ran the world. You turned on the news station and everyone was screaming, stay home, stay away from people. For some people, that part probably wasn't that bad. Introverts, they were probably having a blast. I don't know. But for me, a public speaker, where my job is to travel and speak to people, those were the two things they said we couldn't do anymore. I for sure thought that I was screwed, right? At the time, my wife and I, we just bought a house. I had a kid, I had a 3-year-old son. This was my job. This is how I paid the bills. This is how I fed my family. I mean, public speaking was my entire life. So I was freaking out. But then I noticed something. My son, let me tell you, was having the time of his life. I mean, he was happier during COVID than before COVID. He was running around the house, his Batman cape, happy as can be. I remember thinking to myself, that must be nice, right? The rest of the world is in panic. My son's just here playing. But that's the power of perspective. My perspective was panic, so obviously my reaction was to panic. To me, no more traveling meant no more money. My son's perspective, on the other hand, was different. Me not traveling meant that I could stay home and I could play with him more. So I had a choice to make. As we all do in every situation, how am I going to respond? I could continue to see life from my perspective and respond with panic. Or I could shift my perspective, change my position, get closer to my son. Luckily, I chose the latter, and as a result, my reaction changed. The panic went away. I controlled what was in my control, and I became a better father. I did the same with my wife. I became a better husband, and we got closer as a family during COVID. Now, I'm not saying that COVID was a good thing. I'm simply choosing to see the good that came out of it for me. I believe that no matter how bad a situation is, you always have the opportunity to shift your perspective and pick out the positivity. And to me, the positivity is the silver lining. It's the aspect of the problem that you can control. But in order to focus on the positivity, you first have to separate it from its counterpart, the negativity. And this is way more important than you might think because it changes your brain. You see, our brains are incredibly adaptive. They're constantly forming and reorganizing neural pathways based on our thoughts in our experiences. These neural pathways are like highways in the brain, connecting different regions and enabling us to think and feel and solve problems. Negative thinking can actually damage these pathways. It's like there's a lot of construction going on. Negative thoughts cause stress, and the stress causes inflammation, and that inflammation weakens the neural connections that facilitate the positive thinking and the problem solving. So in other words, focusing on the negativity all the time can actually cause harm to your brain. Man, I wish somebody would have told me that when I was a kid. I would get stuck on repeat with negative thoughts. But that's pretty scary, and I don't like to teach out of fear and tell you what not to do. I want to focus on the positivity and show you what to do instead. So let's just talk about positive thinking. Positive thinking, it has the opposite effect. When you engage in positive thoughts and experiences, you strengthen the neural pathways that are associated with optimism and creativity. This not only improves your mood, but it also enhances your ability to come up with solutions. This means that people who focus on positivity are continually creating new neural connections. These connections allow them to think through the problem more clearly and effectively. Therefore, they are better equipped to navigate challenges because their brains are wired to see challenges for what they truly are, opportunities in disguise. If you don't believe me, you can conduct an experiment in your own life. What I want you to do is create a problem. Any problem, could be hypothetical, even could have a solution to it already. Take that to a person that you know is a positive thinker. They will likely give you multiple solutions because they can think around that problem a million different ways, thanks to their well-developed neural pathways. Next, you're going to take that same problem to a new person who you know is a negative thinker. They might look at the problem and shut it down immediately, just like, nope, I can't do it. Even if you show them what to do and give them the solution, they can still look at it and say, nope, can't do it. This is because they lack the neural pathways necessary to think clearly through the problem and see a successful outcome for themselves. In fact, they might see it working out for you or anybody else, but in their personal realities, they just can't see it working out for themselves. Some of you might be negative thinkers right now, and maybe a visual might make this a little bit more clear for you. So I want you to imagine your brain is like a hill covered in snow. Every time you think, it's like you are sledding down that hill, leaving an imprint or a pathway. A positive thinker, being more optimistic and open to new ideas, will try different ways to sled down the hill each time. This creates multiple pathways, offering various different ways to get down the hill. Over time, the hill becomes covered with a network of diverse paths representing flexibility, adaptability, and problem-solving capabilities. In contrast to that, a negative thinker tends to play it safe and think the same way over and over and over. They create a single groove in the snow that gets deeper and deeper each time they use it. That groove obviously represents negative thoughts like I can't or it won't work, and eventually the groove gets so deep that it becomes the default neural pathway, making it harder for them to create alternative solutions. Some of you right now might be thinking, oh no, that's definitely me. But that's actually a good thought for you to have, because more than likely you haven't realized that before now. And recognizing the problem or the opportunity is the first step to making real change. You see, when you change the way you think, it changes who you are, because it changes your personality. Your personality is made up of the way you think, the way you act, and the way you feel. What this really means is you are your responses. Let me say that again, just to make sure that you get it. You are your responses. For example, identical twins. They have the same DNA, raised by the same parents in the same home with a lot of the same childhood experiences, yet they will have different responses to these experiences. The different responses lead to different outcomes in their life, and eventually over time you will see differences in their DNA due to epigenetics. Epigenetics is the study of your behavior and your environment that causes changes that affect the way that your genes work, showing that your responses can actually influence your genetic expression. Your responses make you who you are. In essence, it's not the events of your life that define you, but it's your responses to them. So by changing your response, you can transform your personal reality by changing your personality and even impact your genetic makeup over time. If that is not an incentive to start shifting your perspective and finding the positivity to change your reaction, then I don't know what is. The challenge or the opportunity that you're going to have here today is to avoid reverting back to your old ways when things get uncomfortable. Because things have to be uncomfortable. When you're trying to change your personality is going to push back and things can get very uncomfortable. But that's good. That's a sign that it's working. Because discomfort is the price you got to pay for progress. True growth is often at the edge of your comfort zone. That's when you start to see real results. As soon as you push yourself past that zone, I tell people all the time, you got to be aware of that comfort zone. Be aware of it because it's deceivingly pleasant. It doesn't hurt, it might actually feel good. That's why they call it the comfort zone. But when you stop stretching and you stop growing, you stop failing and you stop stepping outside of that zone, you stop growing. So if you stop doing that today, then you are now all you will ever be. Now that's a scary thought if you ask me. Some of us got stuck in a comfort zone 20 years ago and we haven't grown one bit. We're mentally still in high school. I find it deeply ironic that most people remain in their comfort zones due to fear, primarily the fear of failure, yet the fear of failure itself is the fear of growth. Because when you fail, you learn and you grow. That means the fear of failure means you're fearing growth itself. Come on, think about that for a second. If you're not growing, you're dying. So if you're afraid of failure and you're afraid of stepping outside of that comfort zone, it means you're afraid to live life. For many people, they are afraid of failure because growing up, they heard that failure was unacceptable. They were taught to avoid failure at all costs. They lived by things like failure's not an option. But if failure's not an option, then neither is success. I'm sorry to tell you, because success is built on a foundation of many failures. In fact, when somebody's really great at something, it simply means that they have failed at it more times than other people. They have attempted it repeatedly, and learned from it every single time. And since they didn't give up, they're now considered great. Take LeBron James, for example. I'm a Michael Jordan fan. I'm not here to debate the GOAT or who's this and who's that. I'm just saying LeBron James is now the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. Now, despite having this title, this man has missed over 14,000 shots in his career. That means that the person who holds the record for scoring the most points in NBA history failed over 14,000 times at the thing that he's known for. You have to let that sink in. You have to realize that maybe the reason you haven't made it yet is you haven't missed enough shots. And the reality is you won't even have the opportunity to miss the shot if you don't take the shot in the first place and try, and you're going to have to do it scared. We do these things called leadership summits. It's a part of our culture shift program that we do in schools. Now, during these summits, I ask the school to handpick me about 30, 40 kids who are the most influential kids on campus. Everybody looks up to these kids, but most of the time, these kids are failing. Did you hear me? Most of the time, these kids do not get straight A's. They're known as the class clowns, but they're leaders. They're leading people in the wrong direction. They just don't know it. They're unaware of their leadership role. When I walk into that class, the first thing they ask is, "Are we in trouble?" And I'm like, "Why do you think you're in trouble?" And they're like, "Because we're the bad kids." They assume this because they're used to getting in trouble. I say, "Who told you you were the bad kid?" Nobody told them. They just get in trouble all the time. They just feel like the bad kid. That's true, they get in trouble all the time, but that's not how everybody sees them. And remember, the event doesn't define you. Your response to it does. And they responded by labeling themselves as the bad kids. So in their own personal realities, that's how everybody else sees them too. Little did they know they're there because everyone sees them as leaders. And when I tell them that, they literally laugh because they cannot see it. so they don't believe it. They can't see it because they have negative emotions attached to the traumatic experience of getting in trouble. And most of them also come from negative environments at home. And all these negative emotions cloud their vision. They can't see within themselves the qualities that everybody else sees. Those emotions are stopping them from seeing themselves for who they truly are. So they label themselves based on how they feel. Many of us unknowingly do this every single day. It's a result of not facing your fear and stepping outside of that comfort zone, because we need someone from the outside sometimes to come in and help us shift our perspective of ourselves and see us for who we truly are and who we could be. For years, I would sit down with these kids and try to go through their traumatic experiences with them and help them deal with their challenges, help them come up with solutions, and they had no trouble telling me what they were going through. They write down on these pieces of paper all their challenges, but when it was time to come up with solutions, their minds would draw a blank. No matter how hard they tried, they could not seem to find a way out. So after a while, I decided to go back to school, get a degree in psychology. I wanted to find better ways to help people. And that's when I figured this out. They couldn't see a future version of themselves because they were so clouded with the negative emotions. Sometimes planning out the future for someone else doesn't help because they can't see it, therefore they won't believe it. And life really is what you believe it is. I could tell you that you're amazing, but if you think you're not enough, then sadly to you, you're not enough. I think this is why people turn to drugs and alcohol for lack of better relief. When you tell someone that they're ruining their life and they're ruining the future they have ahead of them, if they can't see it, they won't care. They don't see 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years into the future. They're not taking future them into consideration right now because to them, that person doesn't exist. That's when I realized I first have to help people remove the negative emotions from their traumatic experiences so they can see a future version of themselves and take that person into consideration in all the decisions that they make today. Unfortunately, the only way to do that is through a process of forgiveness. And the reason why I say unfortunately is because I know forgiveness is so hard. When I talk about forgiveness on stage, I see out in the crowd people literally shake their heads. Like, nope, I'm not doing it. Thousands of people have told me to my face that they would never forgive the person that hurt them. And I have to tell them the hard truth that, well, then you're never going to be fully healed, mentally or physically. You see, when you remember a traumatic experience, your nervous system perceives it as happening right now. Your body responds as if you are being hurt again. So when you choose not to forgive someone who hurt you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, every time you think of that experience, you are being hurt again and again and again. They may have just hurt you one time, maybe twice, maybe even 10 times, but your response to that experience has hurt you again and again, thousands of times. But Jared, they don't deserve forgiveness. Okay, that's fine, I get it. But do you deserve to carry around the negative emotions for them for the rest of your life and to continue to get hurt day after day after day? I don't believe you do. I believe that you deserve freedom as a human being. Freedom from that personal prison that you may not have put yourself in, but you have definitely kept yourself there for a long time. And forgiveness is the key to freedom. Forgiveness is less about saying sorry and it's more about letting go of all the parts of you that are untrue. When something traumatic happens, we tell ourselves a story to justify why it happens. That story, that becomes a part of our identity. If that story isn't true, now you're living in a lie. That causes cognitive dissonance, where you're holding contradictory beliefs about yourself at the same time. And the scary things about lies, ladies and gentlemen, is that they multiply. Eventually, you're a different person around every group of people that you're around because you tell everybody a different story. Think about it. You're a different person at work than you are at home. You're a different person around your kids than your parents. A different person around your spouse and your friends, and you're definitely a different person on social media than you are in real life. Like, how many versions of you are there, and do you still know the true you? A lot of people don't. That's why they have a hard time shifting their perspective and seeing things from another point of view. They're so clouded with negative emotions that even if they get around new people and new perspectives that show them a new way, they're unable to see it. Have you ever seen that movie Soul by Disney? There's a perfect representation of this in the movie. The main character, 22, becomes this lost soul. She can't find her spark, the light inside of her, the truth of who she's truly supposed to be. And she's surrounded by this swirling black cloud of negative emotions, and it starts to attack her friends who are trying to help her. One of the friends runs into the cloud, finds her in the middle. She's sitting there in a fetal position, and she's repeating these things to herself like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, no one loves me, no one likes me, I'm not worthy. And all of these thoughts are creating that cloud, swirling around her, and she's unable to see that she's surrounded by people that love her and have been trying to help her for like thousands of years. Now, some of you are blind with anger. Some of you are so sad that you can't see tomorrow. So before I leave today, I want to show you how to remove that black cloud, so that way you can change your position, shift your perspective, and actually be able to see a pathway forward. For some of you, the first half of this presentation might have been full of things that you've heard 1,000 times before, but you never took it seriously because you couldn't see it working out in your life. If that's the case, then I believe that this is for you. You need to forgive. I don't know what happened to you, but I know that whatever it was, it shouldn't define you. No matter what they did or what you did, forgiveness is the only way to be free from it. I'll break it down to you in 4 simple steps. Remember, feel, replace, and help. So that way you can be healed. Number 1, you have to remember the traumatic experience. I know it's the last thing that you want to think about, and you've been distracting yourself pretty well now for a long time. But today, that has to change. Suppressing negative emotions over time becomes depression. Over more time becomes illness, sickness, disease. Negative emotions cause stress, stress causes inflammation, and that's the beginning of all sickness ever. So we must understand the physical repercussions of not being ourselves. Remember, forgiveness is less about saying sorry, and it's more about letting go of all the parts of you that are untrue. So if you're living in a lie because of a traumatic experience and you tell yourself it's all my fault, I deserve it, I'm not worthy, no one loves me, that's going to be stressful because it is a lie. Remember, there are physical repercussions to lies. We know this because this is how lie detectors work. Stress hormones are released throughout the body, norepinephrine, adrenaline, blood starts pumping. You can't live a lie without it taking a toll on your physical health. So we have to remember the experience first, and then we move on to step number 2. We have to feel the emotions. We can't distract ourselves, we have to allow ourselves to feel. This causes our nervous system to believe the experience is happening again. This gives you the opportunity to change your reaction. It's like going back in time. The first time the experience happened, it changed you, even genetically. Remember, epigenetics. So by feeling the emotions again, you can change your reaction from suppression to forgiveness. This will change your body's response. Instead of holding on, it'll push out the negative emotions. Usually in an outburst of tears, sometimes you gotta scream it out, sometimes you throw it up. I'll be honest with you, it's not pretty, but it is a part of the process. The next step, step number 3, replace the lies with the truth. If you told yourself a lie, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, no one likes me, replace the lies with the truth that you are more than enough, you are worthy, and you are loved. And you have to do this for every single experience that you can remember until all the lies are replaced and you're living in your true identity. I tell my students, get a notebook, write down all the lies on the left side, then one by one replace them on the right side with the truth, so that way you have a bunch of true I am statements. You said, I'm not enough over here, I am enough over here. When you're done, I want you to rip out all of those lies and throw it away. That's not who you are anymore. Lies die when the truth is told. That's why the truth hurts, because part of you has to go. And then I tell them to take a screenshot of those truths and make it the background on their phone, so every day they see who they are meant to be. And then the last step, Step number 4 is helping. Most of you got hurt, you skipped right to helping. You didn't do 1, 2, or 3. Most of the time, like I said, we get hurt, we go right to helping because, it's good and it feels good. But we're just halfway healed people helping other people halfway healed. There's a word for that. It's called trauma bonding. And really, I believe you're helping everyone else because deep down, you're hoping someone will help you. When you're hurt and you're loving everybody else, it's because deep down, you desperately want love for yourself. Think about it like this. I can try to help you, but if you don't help yourself, then you'll still end up helpless. You can't give something that you don't have. It's a universal law. Whatever it is that you want from the world, you must first learn how to give it to yourself. That includes love, respect, and help. But after you've remembered and you've felt and you've replaced all these lies and you're showing up as your true authentic self, you're in a position to truly actually help somebody heal. And when you finally help somebody heal from the very thing that hurt you, that is when life comes full circle and you're completely healed from that experience. Full disclaimer, I said that experience because this is a process of forgiveness and it's ongoing for the rest of your life. It never stops. You don't heal from one thing and then now you're healed forever. Things keep happening. You have to repeat this process throughout your entire life. And I believe that that's a beautiful thing because it's a process that keeps giving because you don't just forgive and then forget. You get to forgive and remember peacefully. Let me say that one again. That's a bar. You need to put that one on a t-shirt. You don't forgive and forget. You forgive and remember peacefully. You get to recall these experiences without the negative emotions that were clouding your vision, and you start to see the reason and the purpose and the lessons within all of it. And that brings an opportunity with it to help yourself grow and help other people grow. So, I know we're running out of time, and before you go on your way, I want to leave you with this quote. It says, "I can be changed by what happened to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it." From this point forward, I want you to embrace forgiveness and replace the lies. So that way you can change your position, shift your perspective, focus on the positivity, change your reaction to life, and see the challenges for what they truly are. Opportunities in disguise. Thank you. That's my time.